garmo yichad. That's Aramaic. And in Aramaic that means that Hashem is united with the lights and also united with the vessels. The vessels aren't something external that are, that don't really belong to him, but they are one existence. And this is the point of chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a new level in understanding what's going on in the world. So we said that there's nature and there is what's above nature. And you said, right, that nature is also some kind of miracle. But this is an ongoing miracle, and that's why it doesn't seem to us like a miracle. Every morning we see the sun. So we might think mistakenly that it's a natural process, but it's also part of Hashem's hand. And that's called Elokim. But maybe there are two different existence here. And one covers over the other. Maybe the name Elokim covers over the name Havaya, which means does not really represent Hashem. And it's some kind of limitation that's here to cover the name of Havaya. And this is where we bring the example of the Yarmulke, of the Kippur, where it's the same entity, the same true existence. It's one existence, and therefore they don't cover each other.
There was a Talmid Chacham in the desert several weeks with me, and he was like Haredi and black and white and so on.
Yes.
Very nice man. But whenever he made a blessing, he had a black kippah on and a white shirt all the time. So he had and then he put a hat over it. So after some days you ask, why you put the hat over it? I say, yeah, I don't have the black hat on it. I say, what's the connection with the black hat and the hat now? You have to have two coverings over there.
Two coverings, exactly, right.
So, but that I never heard that. No, never ever anybody else told me like that.
Interesting.
All the learning.
Right. So that's why we go with a hat, right? A hat, and it used to be much more popular. Sorry.
Or you have a double.
Or you have a handkerchief. Sometimes if we don't have the hat, so we put a handkerchief there. Underneath the kippah.
What do you do in the case, like, if it's very windy and you're afraid to...
Get a thumbtack.
With a coat.
Yeah.
No, like, I have this, you see, I have this thing.
Very good. That's a great solution.
Off, like,
That's a great solution. I actually went I went to Shlichut to Germany once to help out a Chabad house, and we went on the tram, which is the public transportation. And then I remember there was one person that asked me. He said, "How can you?" The Germans are very curious about the Jews, and also they feel very shameful for what they did in the past. So they're very respectful, at least a nice amount of them. I can't say that everyone there is, but I came across very nice people there, and they were very curious. How can you keep the kippah on your head? Why doesn't it fall off your head? So again, there's some people that use what you use, Shai, and it's a great solution. Whatever it is, whatever keeps it on. If you want, you can put a hat. It's also a good solution. Eliyahu, you've got a great cap. It's also a good solution.
From Texas.
Back to our story. You know, we say every day in Aleinu L'Shabeach, we say the pasuk that goes like this. Ki Hashem Elokim b'shamayim mimal v'al ha'aretz mitachas ein od. Which means that Hashem hu ha'elokim. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Elokim. Ein od, there's no other existence. And the deeper meaning of this pasuk, of this verse, is to tell us how the two names of Hashem aren't two separate, different names that contradict each other, that fight between each other. You know, there's always a tension between these two names. It's like two ministers. No. It's part of Hashem's existence, part of His true one entity, that He has these two abilities. On the one hand, to be unlimited, and on the other hand, to be limited and with that limitation to create nature that's limited over here. Now, when we speak about this this topic, so it's a great theory, but what does it mean in a practical way? So today we are in a special day today, and it's tonight there's going to be a Fabregen with Rabbi Meir Levinger. You're all welcome to join. It's going to be a great Fabregen. He came once and he speaks very, very nicely. And it's in honor of Yud Bet and Yud Gimel Tammuz. What happened on Yud Bet and Yud Gimel Tammuz? The previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, he was put in prison for spreading Yiddishkeit in the Soviet Union. And then it was something very bad to spread Judaism in the Soviet Union. They were against any type of religion, especially Judaism. And the Rebbe Rayatz, he fought to open chadarim, to open shuls, to make sure that there's mikvahs, and they put him in prison. And when they put him in prison, the Rebbe Rayatz himself describes what he went through over there. And one of the interesting things that you can see is that the psychological tricks that they used in order to control the Soviet people. And this is something very sad, but in the times when the Soviets were very powerful, Yimach Shmai Stalin, and also before that, people just disappeared on the left and the right. A person didn't come home, no one knew. He was sent to Siberia for 10 years, for 20 years, or maybe he was killed. And that's why, and people could not rely on their neighbors, on their friends. They could not rely on their family members to that extent. You never knew if this person is an agent of the KGB that's trying to see if you are against this or whatever it is. And the Rebbe Rayatz was very firm with them. When they came to bring him to prison, he said, I want to take my talis and tefillin. I'm not leaving the house without taking the talis and tefillin. And then when they brought him into prison, they took his package away with the talis and tefillin. And then he demanded to receive it back. And he was in his cell there, and there were a few other prisoners as well. And he said, I'm not going to eat until you bring back my talis and tefillin. And the prisoners laughed, and also the guards laughed, because they said, this is a place where, believe me, you won't need your talis and tefillin in a day or two. Because in this place, there were, people used to kill them after 24 hours. And also go, let's see you negotiate with the Soviet Union, right? It doesn't really work, you know. Even with the Russians today, it's very hard to negotiate. So then the Rebbe Rayatz tries to negotiate with these people. And nevertheless, he succeeded. After 2 days, they brought him back his talis and tefillin. And he was able to put on the talis and tefillin. So here we see, and it's a lot of other psychological tricks that they did. For example, there was a long corridor, and there was, from both sides, it was just small lamps, you know, with not much light. So you can see the shade of, you can see, not clear, you can see guards, that they had a sword on one side and they had a gun on the other side. And this was all to terrorize the prisoners. And what they told them there, that we just killed 124. They used to go into the cell. We just killed last night 124 prisoners. This is all to terrorize them and to try and psychologically affect them. And the Rebbe Rayatz was very strong against them, to the extent that he was allowed to write in prison. No one else was allowed to write in prison, but he was allowed to write. And not only that, but after they released the Rebbe Rayatz, he is there in the train station. He's in the train station, and he's about to go to exile for 3 years. That was their decision. And over there, he sits and he gives a speech to all the Jews in Leningrad that came to see him. And it was very dangerous to come and see the Rebbe Rayatz, because automatically the KGB knew, oh, you linked to the Rebbe Rayatz, and they would target you. And there the Rebbe Rayatz did not apologize. He did not say, ooh, listen to the Russians, listen to the Soviets. He said, like this, that only in exile, the only thing that people have control is over our bodies. But our souls are completely free, and we've got to remember that. What the Goyim can take from us is the freedom of our bodies. But the freedom of our souls, that is something that no one can touch at all. And this maybe shows us a bit about the character of the Rebbe Rayat. You see a picture of the Rebbe Rayat. It's 1, 2, 3, the fourth picture, and there's a few other pictures. Thank you, Mordechai. There's a few other pictures also.
What year was this?
This is 1927. Tafresh Pei Zayin, 1927.
How many? He was just in jail for a few months?
Just for actually a few weeks. A few weeks from the middle of Sivan, or closer to the end of Sivan, and until Gimel Tammuz, which is 2 weeks basically. It was 2 weeks, the middle of Sivan till Gimel Tammuz. And then he was sent to exile for 3 years to Kostroma, which is somewhere in Kazakhstan or something like that. And then on Yud Bet Tammuz, which is yesterday and today at Gimel Tammuz, he was also sent free even from those 3 years in exile. And then they told him to leave Russia. That's why it's interesting if you would, there's a special song for every Hasidic day has its own Hasidic nigun, right? And this day of redemption, of the Rebbe Rayat being freed from exile, there's also a song, but it's not such a happy song. And the song goes like this. That's how the song goes, but it's not like the song, for example, for Yutes Kislev. That is the day that the Alter Rebbe was freed from prison. And in that case, the song ends, Vani Yevtach Bach, Vani Yevtach. That's much more of a happy song, right? Why is that? Because there wasn't a happy end to the story. The truth is that the Soviets, the Baruch Hashem, that the Rebbe Rayat was freed from prison. He wasn't killed, he wasn't put in exile, he wasn't sent to Siberia. That's the great miracle. But the Rebbe Rayat needed to leave Russia, and he left there many Jews that lost their connection to Judaism over the time of 40, 50, 60 years. Some were able to keep their Judaism, and the Hasidim also were in charge. The Hasidim spent there over 20, 25, 30 years of being active and spreading Yiddishkeit, making sure to do a bris, and was very dangerous, literally dangerous.
When did this start?
It started right after the First World War, where the Bolsheviks, they fought the Tsar. And until the First World War, the Tsar was basically the ruler of Russia. And then the Bolsheviks took over. And they were against any type of religion, and especially Judaism.
Like 1918?
So that started in 1918, and there was a civil war until 1920, I think, or something like that, or even a bit later, maybe 1921. And from that time onwards, they started to close all the shuls, to close all the chadorim, no Jewish schools. They had one public school that was called the Shkola. And the Rebbe Rayat also spoke about that. There was a gathering on Purim Katan, which is the small Purim, right? If we have a leap year, we have 2 months of Adar. So the first month of Adar we celebrated, it's called Purim Katan. And the Rebbe Rayat was in Moscow, and he gathered the Hasidim for a Fabregen, and he spoke very strongly against sending the children to the Shkola. And he said, we've got a Masiras Nefesh like Mordechai and the Jewish children then. In the times of Haman, they were very much prepared to sacrifice themselves. They did not convert, and the Jewish kids had a great role in what happened, because he gathered them all and they fasted for 3 days. From where does all of this, the strength, come from? Of the previous Rebbe, being so firm about the talis and tefillin. And you're fighting the Soviet Union. It wasn't a joke. Today, it's easier to talk to a wall than to talk to Putin. Now, imagine speaking to the Soviet Union, it's even worse, right?
It's the same thing. Talk to a wall or talk to Putin. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
You'll get more from talking to the hotel.
The kotel, that's something else. That's a living wall. So there, the joke is about a person in Moscow that had a parrot. And the parrot was talking and was saying that Stalin is a bad person and Bolsheviks and communism, that's a bad idea. And the KGB heard that they heard that they're talking their things that they're not supposed to talk. So they came and they searched the apartment, and when they knocked on the door, so he got so scared, he didn't know what to do. He took the parrot, he put the parrot into the freezer. Put him in the freezer. And they walking around, and then they check the fridge, they check the freezer, and then they see a parrot. They take the parrot out, and the parrot starts saying, well, Stalin is a great person, and there's no better place than Russia. And they turn to the person that they searched his apartment, and they told him, you see what 10 minutes in Siberia can do to you?
The parrot was afraid of what was going to happen to him. What would happen to the chicken that was in the freezer?
So where does this all come from? This comes from Shaar Hayichud Vehaemunah. Understanding that nature is also part of Hashem's hand. And this is what the Rebbe Rayatz told him. And if we can take something practical out of this chapter, it's that, for example, just one moment, this is Beryl Lazar and Putin. So if we can take something practical out of this chapter over here, is that even if you stand against the person that hates you the most, that he's against you, that he wants to destroy you, he wants no Judaism whatsoever, think about it one moment. Nature is part of what Hashem brought into the world. He creates nature every moment. He's creating the Soviets that are trying to stop me from keeping Torah and mitzvahs. But it's Hashem that created them. And therefore, we do have the power to go against it. It's not a wall. It's a wall that is always made by Hashem. So Hashem also can change the quality of the wall. That is why the world, it sometimes seems that it covers over Yiddishkeit, and it covers over godliness, and it covers over the sparks of Kedusha. But truly, if we think about it, we've got to know that, no, that is also part of Hashem's hand. That is also part of the names of Hashem that He creates every moment. And that is where we can receive the power of standing firm and strong with our Judaism. Now, I cannot say that I would do it. I think that most likely that I would not do it. I would be like the parrot, 10 minutes in the freezer. But the Rebbe Rayatz, the leader of the Hasidus, and actually many Hasidim over there and then, they were prepared to give up everything. This is the quality of Hasidus. And other movements, we don't like to speak always about comparing other movements because everyone is good and everyone does a good job in their way. But other movements left Russia as the Soviets took control. All the other Jewish movements. The only movement that stayed in Russia was Chabad. And those individuals, there are some families that are now Chabad families, but in the past they were not Chabad families, but they were stuck in Russia. And the only way that they could be connected to Judaism was through being connected to Chabad. And that's how the families came close to Chabad. And there are a few also other Litvisha people. There is, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Yitzchak Zilber. He lived in Yerushalayim. He lived, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Ramot, in Yerushalayim. And he wasn't a Chabad, and he was very strong, and he was stubborn in Russia, and he was successful, but he always had a connection to Chabad Hasidim. So how was Chabad so successful in Russia, in such a dark place? This is Shaar Hayichud Vehaemunah, understanding that the two names of Hashem, Havaya and Elokim, do not contradict each other, but they work together. It's hard, it's a challenge, because it's a shield, right? We spoke about the fact that its nature is the hand of Hashem, but it's the shield. It seems to be disconnected.
Hashem tells you it's time to leave.
Sorry?
Maybe sometime Hashem tells you it's time to go.
So that's it. It's an interesting point, and I'll tell you the approach that the Rebbe has about these things, and this has to do also with professors that became Baalei Tshuva, and not only professors but many people that had a certain profession and that they had a certain field of expertise or whatever it was, a profession, field of business that they were involved, and they told the Rebbe, listen Rebbe, I'm now becoming a Baal Tshuva and I'm coming close to Hashem. I want to leave everything and I want to go to Yerushalayim, learn Torah over here. The Rebbe said no. The Rebbe said continue in your area with your job and over there spread Judaism. Because if we think to the long term, right, the short term for that individual, he would benefit much more from leaving and from studying Torah in his place. But if we look at the long term and if we look at the general Am Yisrael, right, the general population of Am Yisrael, so basically in that case, we've got to make sure that they are taken care of. And that's why the Hasidim, at a certain point, they did leave. You know when they left? Tafshin Zayin, 1947. What happened in 1947? So first of all, they were there 20 years, from 1927 to 1947. 20 years they were spreading Judaism in Russia. And it became just too difficult. And then the Russian government said whoever's a Polish citizen, because many of the Poles escaped to Russia during the war. And they said, if you are a Polish citizen, then you can leave back to Poland. No problem. The rest of the Russians, they weren't allowed to leave the country. They were behind the Iron Curtain, right? And basically what happened is that the Hasidim used that opportunity. Some of them actually had Polish IDs. Others just created Polish IDs. There was a whole operation. The Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe Tzimchana, escaped in that way. They prepared for her a Polish ID, a fake ID, and that's how she escaped the Soviet Union. So many did leave, but again, the mission is to make sure that we can try and keep Judaism in Russia.
One of my son-in-laws, great-grandfather came from Russia in 1912.
Wow.
He went to the United States.
That's 1912, okay.
He already saw things were getting very bad in 1912.
Right.
And they had enough money only for him, so he said, I'll go over, I'll get established. When I do, he had one child, and I'll send you and the child over.
Wow.
And in the meantime, through Red Cross, I'll send you money over that I make so you can survive. It was very hard. So he came to the United States. They were shocked because most of the Jews, the women stopped covering their hair when they came over.
Yeah.
And now they assuming like this. And he
Right.
wrote to his wife, I bring you over, you take your head covering off. I'm telling you right now, it's an epidemic over there.
Right. And keeping
So-
Shabbos also is very difficult.
Right. So he came into Galveston, Texas, and he ended up migrating all the way up into Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And he didn't have much money. He stayed in the shul. He cleaned the shul and he stayed in the shul. He tried to figure out what to do to make money, and he started collecting metal. He had a little wagon. He would scrap metal. He would take it to town, and he did that for a while. He was sending money. So after a while, he was able to buy some machinery and stuff. And anyway, he started this whole salvage huge project, and worth billions of dollars around the world.
Wow.
And he started all the education in Minneapolis, St. Paul. All the religious, he supported
Amazing.
everything.
Wow.
So he left at that time, and he saw the writing for him. It was time to go, and yet he became a light there. And, you know, and his family are all stayed very religious.
Very nice. It's all part of the plan of Hashem.
Right. So some people, it's time for them to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe not.
Right, definitely, for sure. Some people, and that's it's again. It depends on the person. It depends on the ability of the person to succeed wherever he is. You know. So for him, his shlichut. Each one has his different shlichut in the world. For him, his shlichut was going to the States and establishing Judaism there, which is not less important. And that's why the Rebbe Rayatz himself, what did he do? He didn't stay in Russia. He went to the States and also strengthened Judaism in America. America is not different. So each one has his shlichut, and what did I wanted to mention? So you, Yakome, you sent here a great. This is a great video of Ber Elazar with Putin, and Putin has a great amount of respect towards Jewish life in Russia and towards the rabbis.
Not anymore.
I think he still has. There's no anti-Semitism there in public, which is the most important thing.
It's finished.
Okay, we'll see. Hopefully it's not.
He bought his teacher a house.
In Tel Aviv, right? Nachon.
He was brought up in it. He was like a Shabbos boy.
Yeah, he was. So once again, that is the quality of the Rebbe Rayatz, being able to. So this is what I wanted to say. Also, it's about the Rebbe. They just sent out a video, a very inspiring video of Jews in Russia, asking the Rebbe for requests, and they needed to smuggle that out. So there were Jewish tourists that used to come to Russia. Again, this wasn't 1940, not 1950, not 1960, but a bit later, 1970s, the early 1980s. And then people used to, tourists, even Jewish tourists, they used to smuggle in mezuzahs, tefillin, all of those things. Did you do that?
No, my father
Your father?
was smuggling in, yes, and money too.
Yeah, fair. And who told them to bring it into Russia? The Rebbe?
The Rebbe.
The Rebbe. So yeah, it's
And
a great...
he smuggled out of Russia
What did he smuggle out?
Xaviad.
Xaviad, wow. Xaviad Av, this is... Xaviad של הרבי, על ביכל ציפל. ציפל. Wow. Tafshin Yud Ches. This is a Xaviad, which is the handwriting of the Rebbe, right? Wow. So
How was he able to do that? Well,
My father used to go there 4 or 5 times a year. He was also sent to prison once.
where? In Russia?
In Leningrad.
Wow. But he wasn't a Russian citizen, right?
No, he was
how was he able to
Italian.
go and do business somehow?
Excuse me?
How did he do business?
We were dealing, I also went there. We were dealing in furs. And in Leningrad there is Soyuz Pushnina, which is an auction house. And we used to go there. When I went there, I was told, don't speak to the Rav. He's a spy of the government.
Yep.
Spy to the Shamash.
Yep. Interesting. They knew the rabbi was a spy of the KGB.
Yeah.
And they put him there to be the rabbi because then he would, you would trust him. You'd say, this is the rabbi, let me give him tefillin, let me give... But they all knew, don't speak to him.
What happened? They got arrested?
Well, my father smuggled in money, sidurim, tefillin, and once they had the plane didn't leave, so they went by train. But the luggage, they came at the airport, and not with my father. So when the luggage arrived to the airport, they opened it up. and they found monies for him, this and that. And they kept him 3 days in prison. And since then, the Rebbe said, you don't need to go anymore to Russia, don't go anymore to Russia. So for another 10 years, 15 years, we didn't go. I went there in the time of what's his name?
Brezhnev.
No?
Gorbachev.
At the beginning. And it was much easier then. But nevertheless, when I went with a student of the Shamash in taxi to spread money, the student told me, in the taxi, keep quiet, don't speak, because they are
Listening.
microphone and listening.
Wow. Amazing.
What,
So,
like in the cab or just?
Yes, in the cab.
yeah, they knew that the tourist,
This
the
one,
whole
I think,
regime was...
You couldn't have taken off the microphone?
I think this was 81, 82, something like that. No, it was already 83.
What, you couldn't have taken the microphone off? The
No,
taxi
if
drivers?
you don't want to end up in
No,
prison,
They were
taxi dri-
spies of they were
see, it's all, you couldn't rely on anyone. So, so we see that,
Well,
so,
how did they put this guy as the rabbi? Everybody say, well, where did you come from? You know?
No,
so they knew that he's a
He was
spy.
already a rabbi. And
They take a proper rabbi and tell him, or you do what we say,
Or we
or
send you
your
to
family
Siberia.
is going to go to Siberia, and you have no choice.
Very simple. So they smuggled in also tefillin, mezuzahs, and a lot of other things, and then they smuggled out certain things. So one of the things that they just sent is a video that this tourist took of Jews in Moscow, or in Leningrad, I think. And this could be also maybe closer, maybe the 80s, where it was a bit easier. And the Rebbe took a look at this video, looking at all the Jews asking for a blessings, and you see there's one person, there's one young student, and he says, Rebbe, I want from you a blessing. What is he asking for? To leave Russia, to succeed in business, to find a shidduch. He asks for one thing. He asks that they should let him off when an exam falls out on Shabbos. That's amazing. It's a young Jewish boy. He's not young, he's 20. He studies in university or in the shkola, whatever it is. And the only request that he has is that he should be able to keep Shabbos. So the Rebbe took a look at this, and the Rebbe cried a lot when he looked at these videos of the people, some people asking for blessings, that their family should leave, asking for their children to continue the ways of Hashem, which wasn't easy at all. And I was thinking to myself, why was the Rebbe so emotional about this? He came from Ukraine, right? He came from Russia. So maybe it was some kind of sentimental, that he felt a certain connection to these people. But it's not only that. The Rebbe, as the leader of the Jewish people, he is in charge, and he feels a responsibility that everyone keeps Torah and mitzvahs. That everyone has the ability to go follow the ways of Hashem. And the only place in the world that there are Jews in a significant amount, but nevertheless they are in prison and they cannot keep Torah and mitzvahs. In other words, their neshama, their souls cannot connect to Hashem, is in Russia. And that's very painful. And when the Rebbe spoke about the Soviet Union, about the Russian Jews over there, the Rebbe was very emotional about it. Why? Because that's a place where Jews are in exile, in prison, in a way where they can't keep Torah and mitzvahs. There's no other place like that, even China. There aren't many Jews in China, and the Jews that were there, they were able to leave. There we are talking about millions of Jews that stayed in Russia without an ability to keep Torah and mitzvahs. Millions, yes. There were millions. The Aliyah that came over here, I don't remember the exact amount, but we're talking about, I don't know if it's, got to look at.
I think it was 1.2 million.
1.2 million Jews that made Aliyah and came to Israel after the Iron Curtain collapsed. 1.2 million. never mind those that moved to the States, those that still remained in Russia, and until this very day. There are a couple of, over 100,000 Jews in Russia today. It's got to be, I don't know the exact number, but just a significant amount. So the power that we get to fight any type of whatever it is that goes against Yiddishkeit, against Judaism, is from the Tanya, from these chapters that speak to us about Achdus Hashem, about the unity of Hashem, about the fact that Hashem has Shem Elokim, and that's what controls nature. Yishar Koach.